Hello friends, welcome to my Princess Diana channel. Before moving on to the video, if you are not subscribed to my channel, do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, so let's move on to the video. Lemonada's venture with Meghan's was caused by the podcast project going bust because Meghan's contract was failed. They have suspended the Archetypes podcast with Meghan until 2025. I don't know. Maybe she's too busy with her Netflix TV schedule. Or maybe she isn't into something. This is also something very surprising, and I'm sure you will find it a bit interesting. Now let me give you a message today and let's talk about the podcast saga. I'm still not sure about you and if you are into listening to podcasts. I have heard it has become very trendy this year, and I am still not sure if I should get in on the hype. However, I have very exciting stories for you no matter what happens. As always, let's go through some news. First and major news. The Duchess of Sussex, and I am sure you are very familiar with her, has disclosed a major announcement in February about signing with Lemonada Media. This female-founded organization was designed to make life less irritating. It is important to note that the Archetypes was both a client of Spotify and that Meghan was the executive producer of Archetypes. Despite that, it is not a dispute with the CEO of Spotify and resulted in a falling out, cutting with the audio giant. Thus, her fresh podcast series by doing business with Lemonada may be questioned due to the limited staff members in the company. The Count said that the new series for Archetypes was underway, but it would not be released until 2025 since Meghan holds many Netflix projects this year. Lemonada's move is wise from my perspective while considering the lineup of yet-to-be-revealed very high-profile guests by Meghan. The latter is most likely a replica of the line of people unknown to most has been fans of hers who compliment her, except Mindy Kaling. I wonder how many listeners that show on Archetypes has on Lemonada. They must have some numbers bloated by her avid fans. Netflix did not inspire many other podcasters to produce lots of other things in most observers' libraries, like a web series or a movie every 6 months, but Meghan seemed to inspire others non-stop. What else can Meghan just not afford to do? Lemonada's fret was the timing of the events regarding its podcast launching and American Riviera Orchard lifestyle brand by Meghan. The company did not wish her filming of the TV series to outshine the podcast's debut. Netflix identifies it as a series on cooking, gardening, gathering, and friendship. Meghan could host the shows should she be careful with her time. She still frequently failed to deliver on time despite all that time, money, and sources. This was especially the case with the podcast Delayed Stereotypes, and she only had a boatload of producers helping her. She had nannies, cooks, gardeners, housemaids, and the drivers on call, but for some reason, she could not free herself from what appears to have been excessive time spent online. It is her laziness. She is the one who said this, indicating that during the early years of her children, she spent most of her time on the internet and that alone proves her laziness. The other reason given was she had people scheduled on the podcast, and she would also be talking about them for the lifestyle brand. The counter to that is whether that has ever stopped her from being the center of the media. Her charm is that she is not the type to do things just for attention, hence the doctrine of making an excuse for her involvement in delays does not hold. This is perhaps where there was no podcasting. The only reason she took this before the Netflix reality shows is because she would have her podcast first and announce it just a little earlier. Honestly, I don't know what she was thinking. Why would the launch of a lifestyle brand appear before the podcast? Both complement each other. Without the media, the podcast would not be visible. Cindy McCain was involved in both a lot of things, but it is just logic. She was not psychologically ready, mainly because she did not have to make the podcast, as usual. Consistently under-delivering defines her brand so rightly here. She surely has a lot of stuff to explore deeply with the podcast, something similar to the construction hassles and job learning curve. This is a fantastic time for you to talk about yourself, do it. Meghan's arrangement with Netflix ends next year. Wait, it only now hits me. I suspect the Harkles are thrilled that the Netflix deal is up. They are going to get royalties, no question, from the now cancelled contract. I mean, I assumed that she got paid for that podcast with Lemonada after they announced the deal. Here's my idea: she left Spotify after the Simmons mess, which basically labeled her and everyone else involved in the leak as grifters. So I thought I'd give a go with Audible, and he told Amazon. Somehow, she did the offer to do the podcast with Lemonada. Markle paid to have her podcast's parking spot there for a while. Somehow, it worked out good for everybody, with short-term PR and Lemonada getting some cash from the streams. In reality, it seems like at some point, everybody has been prepared for not just that there would be new messages, but that sometimes even public postponements have been utilized to promote the same narrative. The attention then generally drifts away from it, and by the year 2025, it is extremely likely that even the word archetype would have vanished. Amendment. Entreprise's destiny, the American Riviera Orchard, is very much uncertain as the delays and cancellations grow. This kind of simply reinforces the ultra-short-term feature of media ventures and the audience's low attention span because they're almost always topped off by new players who vie for it. Some annals of recently forgotten history have left behind. And on Lemonada's front, they almost seem fairly lukewarm regarding Meghan's efforts with the podcast. If Meghan decides to go forward with the podcast or decides to not go through with it, it really doesn't seem like Lemonada has any skin in the game. From the look of it, their focus is on raising the visibility of the brand toward an upswing in sales, not on what Meghan is doing with her podcasting. That means their first priority is getting the most they can out of their association with Meghan to grow their brand reach and, therefore, drive patronage toward their business. 2 months into the job and already done with Lemonada, releasing episodes on Spotify in 2025 doesn't make any sense. Who's gonna tune into 3 to 4 year old podcasts? And we all know Meghan isn't making new ones. It's just another fumble. Lemonada just released these episodes with a Spotify drop and, maybe they could have just gone out, drummed up some interest, might have even made some money. Now it's just another disappointment, most likely Lemonada footing the PR bill here from Meghan's deal for views, and Meghan's interest, like always, is waning on to the next thing. Rebranded American Riviera Orchard. Maybe there'd be some filming on that, which she enjoys, but hey, would anything be selling? Well, I highly doubt it. I doubt that's the way this show was saved with a signed contract from Netflix, and that sounds more like Harry's wishful thinking. She's putting Harry's money on the line here, and Netflix also just might say no. A real contract is traded for a wilder prospect of a TV exhibit starring somebody as attractive as a reptile. She trades a real contract for a TV show starring somebody as attractive as a reptile. Her ineptness is staggering. As previously said, a podcast right now would seem a lot more acceptable. As I explained earlier, podcasts have moved on quite a bit and have become a very hip kind of content and consumption. A project where the series takes a long shot, either made about Meghan or her husband, also seemed a bit implausible. Indeed, one might wonder who would watch it. I could certainly not imagine myself sitting down to watch a whole series. I am confident there are countless people out there who would be just as incredulous. Lemonada would be enraged if he said something like that. Meghan signed with them, but instead of creating podcast episodes, she is producing with Netflix. She is hastily meeting Netflix's target date, selling as much as possible, and almost definitely not extending her contract when it expires in 2025. Finally, and perhaps most crucially, it must somehow be indicated that Meghan appears to lack for nothing in terms of natural, or God-given, if one likes, abilities or talents. True greatness takes considerably more than that. It would be followed by education and knowledge while obtaining real practical experience encounter. This is followed by experience in the chosen field. One might think of the likes of the contestants of popular talent shows who went behind hours of hard work and practice to make sure their talent was excellent at intensive music lessons, hours of playing their instruments and during choir or band practice sessions. This experience in developing a talent urges one to continually strive to be able to be competent and expert whatever one wants in any field. I am uncertain whether Meghan must have spent enough time perfecting her acting skills or any other enterprise. I have little faith in her. I believe she might have waited rapidly for months or years before delving into other activities, say investigating cooking concerns or her American Riviera orchard. It seems like a pursuit she intends to imitate great achievement but not care about or have expertise. This is how shallow Meghan becomes involved in the activity, questioning her dedication and willingness to grow and aptitude in those areas should Lemonada be warned of attention in the new year. Meghan should beware of the gap that it has demonstrated by allowing people to wait for years before uploading poor quality studies on Spotify. The document does not accurately forecast Lemonada's prospect for new material in 2025. The best possible course of action for Lemonada is to take an attitude and wait to see what precisely happens after Meghan's latest business activity. In light of the circumstances and conceivable dangers, the more reasonable option that Lemonada may take is presumably pulling the plug on any contractual duty connected to Meghan and diminishing the dangers of conceivable negative results. That's so much for next episode, on one of the soapiest continuing media sagas of our day. A rather amazing development, in reality, considering his long and highly successful 6-year career at United Talent Agency in Utah. It's a highly controversial decision. Naturally, one may cast doubt of the motives for making such an appointment. One could theorize what could have possibly driven Meghan and Harry to select Bullia as the person for the job and see his credentials or experience as uniquely superior to any contender. It is also a valid question: how does this reflect on the image of Meghan and Harry, as well as, actually, on the public image of Utah, since any one of them could potentially return? Somehow, the Bullia appointment adds yet another layer to the intricate tapestry of this years-long saga of Meghan and Harry's media escapades. So, my newly discovered piece of knowledge and my interest in the work of a press secretary had to coincide. And that is what I learned. A press secretary is one of those necessary cross-sectional spokesmen whose activity allows the situation when the government authority on the one side and some industry or organization and the general public on the other can function relatively systematically and politely. In terms of being an interface, they have quite a lot in common with an ordinary public affairs specialist, but they usually understand much more about the law and the circle of power, politics and other important people's life areas. Such experiences help them lead the organization on occasions when it may dwell in the public space light and motivate them to hash over the difficulties of communicating with the same gray population. One of the essential responsibilities of the press secretary is answering reporters' questions, developing press releases and speeches, planning informal and formal meetings and briefings, and ultimately giving graphic information to media to sustain more or less developing the organization's or institution's public appearance. Quite often, he or she is the principal spokesman with barely a second in command. Also, many administrations have deputy press secretaries. They are frequently high-level political appointees who support the work of the press secretary and the communications director. Typically drafts press releases and press advisories, which are later reviewed by the press and communication directors. The press secretary is assisted by an assistant press secretaries or press officers. Therefore, press secretaries brief the press during critical organization events or when indivertible problems have to be addressed. Therefore, they must have a comprehensive understanding of the institution or organization they are representing. Besides explaining its policies, they must answer controversial questions it has released opinions about and what independent decisions or stands it has made. Electively, this expects a comprehension of the association's way of thinking, objectives, just because of the bigger socio-political setting in which it works. What do these unordinary strides taken by Meghan and Harry say regarding them? Do they recommend a conceivable drive into politics, hoping to actuate change and impact change the conservative way? Or is it their go to build up themselves as pioneers of a cross-disciplinary association that empowers others to change society around issues that issue to them? This is a subject that I will be investigating profoundly, finishing their work to do as such. It might sound somewhat great examination, yet it explains to leave me gobsmacked and anxious to discover more about the clues and incentives. He is an outspoken advocate of LGBTQIA rights in the arts and entertainment industry, which I find amazing. I think that entering a highly specific field where Harry and Meghan have already acquired their reputation was a poor decision. If he chooses to pursue this career for several more years, I anticipate him to be criticized. Currently, he is the topic of every newspaper. It is important to mention that Meghan constantly happens to undervalue her team. This seems to be rhythmic behavior, and Harry has used to such treatment. He does not accept experts' opinions, and I believe this is a real challenge for Bullia. I consider it extremely difficult to reveal their arrogant nature, and it goes far beyond the 4 lines that we would all feel comfortable with. Do Meghan and Harry really need a deputy press secretary? Maybe a director of communications is a better fit? It appears that they are still part of the British monarchy. It is not a title but behavior. Frankly, they are suffering from delusions of grandeur. Do they have a communication director at the White House too? Frankly, all these titles are for them. They should realize that they are just a celebrity couple, and, in truth, Hollywood does not hire press secretaries. They hire publicists. Their attempt to control the media and depict themselves as a major corporation is laughable. Responsentity should not have appeared at all. Can you mention a celebrity with a deputy press secretary? When further research was conducted, it turned out that the United Talent Agency, who had once employed Bullia, also represented Omid Scobie, the man who had leaked the draft of Endgame and started a controversy involving some members of the royal family. Is this how Bullia gets paid back? That is why the CEO of this agency should definitely be reminded of some things he said about Meghan and how untalented she was. The reason Knopf was included is that he did not actually understand what was going on. Omid would provide information about his royal clients when Knopf asked, apparently alerting members of the staff who were bullied to avoid potentially. When his contract ends, however, may he have the same confidence he has now or even not, if he loses leverage due to condition of the job market? That is the issue with some incompetent people, they then expect some magic from their sub-employees. I am still wondering on Meghan not picking a woman. I think that she often claims to be a big feminist but she is not, right? Since there is so much diversity in the UK, I wonder why she could not find a qualified woman of color to help her. I think Meghan does not want to work with women and compete them. Maybe she wants to be the only woman surrounded by men seduced by her that even her husband does not see any other woman but her. Perhaps it's what they all dream of. I mean, they think, this man will bring us what we want, love and respect. I wonder whether he knows what he is getting into. I mean, that smirk might fool you. Get ready to be lauded. These two are extremely smug, and it is almost funny. They behave like government officials. Such a weird celebration of their cousin's first birthday. Was it possible that Meghan forced Harry to do it because he is formally a prince? This is indeed difficult to comprehend. Is it a full-time telecommuting role or a half-time one? In any case, the time management of these 2 press secretaries seems odd to me. They didn't seem to do much of anything. What could make Kyle want to work with these 2 hapless guys when they were infamous among the staff? Almost feel bad for the guy. Any takers on how long he lasts? In summary, they evidently have so much power in employing and firing people as they wish. For their public relations strategies and press releases, evidently the yet are not pronounced. Instead, it kind of looks like a pattern of former employees getting reabsorbed back in different roles within their domain, and this kind of internal shuffle repeats itself rather than genuinely engaging from the outside. There is no way she was going to be the one that would throw them their floatable or rescue the Titanic of failure their lives have, by all appearances, become. Sociopathic patterns of behavior and habitual deceit have propelled them quite perilously close to the brink of disgrace. Was Bullia lured away by a big salary or simply disenchanted with his United Talent Agency job? The speculation that goes around is how long he would stay with Harry and Meghan. It would be a very short duration unless he proves himself to be supremely pliable. Harry and Meghan would have to pay him an astronomically large salary, not to mention insurance, retirement contributions, housing, probably a car allowance, and guaranteed employment. But, of course, they won't. He is simply not the kind of person who will be based on bribes in the form of designer clothes and from a friendly friendship with Harry. Most likely, people like Bullia are guided only by the pursuit of fame. Unlike her senior staff, who were dignified and professional and went out decently, but simply will have to stay among the ruins because the demand for them will be like at the shore. Finally, I hope that it is Meghan that Lemonada will sign with. Her entire character seems ready to tear down anything that doesn't involve material gain. This may be even more accurate than it was when you point out the obvious. Her life revolves around that criterion, to be in a world where everyone talks about her. Everything else is secondary to that. This includes the fact that she pretends to downgrade a model when working to build an exclusive TV series with Netflix based solely on the reputability of the brand and their decision to give you more latitude than they've offered for success over the course of decades. It is an obvious statement that she would never choose the two projects for fame and recognition. There is a part of the whole situation if one wishes. While it cannot be studied or inferred openly, observation of Harry and Meghan's well-known aristocratic laziness over the course of Bullia's career may attempt to do so. He may find in the end that the rise in fame from association is greater than it is assumed. He will not actually be able to pull more out of the deal offers him average character to suffer. That's it for our video, my friends. I hope you have liked it. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and like the video. If you haven't done so yet, if you want to be first to be informed about my content, please subscribe to the channel and make sure you turn on notifications. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself and stay healthy. I'll see you in the next one.